Welcome to the voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. Don't forget to let other people know that you listen to this program and where they can find it. They can find Catholic Audio Media is what we call the podcast. You can find it over on your favorite podcast platform as well as CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can tune us in here at WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM and WROLradio.com, which you can hear all over the world, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Time. And you can just tune us in, and you can let other people know where to find us. Especially, you can let them know what you like about the show, what's special about the show. And we're continuing a very special interview with David Pinault, who wrote the introduction to the book on Charles de Foucauld. It's on sale over at Ignatius Press. It's the second edition. It's written by Jean-Jacques Antier, and David wrote the introduction to the book. As well, he talks about his own book he just released, which I'll tell you about too. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to tell you more about it after I read it, and we're going to interview David again, and that's called Providence Blue. But in the meantime, we're continuing on. We're going to talk about the martyrdom of Charles de Foucauld. And as I told you yesterday, I didn't know anything about him prior to preparing myself for this interview, not even how to spell his name. So let's go into the martyrdom and what was all behind that of Charles de Foucauld on the voice of St. Anthony. Now, he was martyred at the end of his life.
Yeah,
what was that about?
1916, that's right.
So before World War I?
It was actually during World War I. So,
okay.
Yeah, so World War in 1914 and 1918. So right in the middle of that, linked to the unrest, Germany, as a matter of state policy, because Germany knew that both the French Empire and the British Empire had many local Muslim populations. Germany encouraged, because one of Germany's allies was the Ottoman Empire of Turkey.
Okay.
In World War I. And so Germany encouraged the Turks to basically preach jihad, holy war, against the Western Allies in their colonies. And so there were various militant groups, and one of those militant groups, they basically jihadists, coming across the border from places like Libya and so forth. So they would make raids in French Algeria, and he was killed in one such raid. In the biography for which I wrote the foreword, Jean-Jacques Antier, the author of this biography, published by Ignatius, what Antier does is he mentions that, according to eyewitnesses, when the jihadists captured Foucauld and tied him up and held a rifle to his head, they told him to recite the Shahada, to declare the Muslim creed of faith and give up, his Christian faith. Of course, he did not do that. He remained steadfast in his faith, and he was killed on the spot.
It sounds, and I don't want to make any connection that comes out the wrong way, but it sounds very similar to what ISIS was doing.
Well, yes. I mean, there's, let's just put it this way. I've spent, as I mentioned, a fair amount of time myself, living in Muslim populations, and, some of the best and a few of the worst experiences of my life have been, spent in Muslim countries. And, the overwhelming majority of Muslims that I have dealt with have been, wonderful people, and I've received tremendous amounts of hospitality and friendship there. But, every religion has its, which you could call spiritual occupational hazards, so to speak. And in Islam, for reasons, reasons having to do, I think, partly with very early historical developments in Islam, and there has always been what you could call, depending on your point of view, the risk of declaring holy war in the name of religion. And of course, the notion of holy war pops up in various cultures. You see it at work, of course, in the history of Christianity. But the particular characteristic of it in Islam, and one reason why it recurs throughout Islamic history, is that the Prophet Muhammad himself is someone who engaged in physical warfare against his enemies and did so in the name of his faith. And Muslims today, whether they're Sunni or Shia, whatever denomination they belong to, according to Islamic tradition, Muslims today agree, first that the Prophet Muhammad is regarded as what they call ma'asum. Ma'asum means that he's sinless, infallible, and perfect. And second, that we're supposed to imitate his life. That's what's called the sunnah, the exemplary lifestyle of Muhammad. And so the fact that Muhammad engaged in warfare in defense of Islam, then that creates a paradigm. And one point of controversy throughout Islamic history has been, okay, how do we understand this notion of jihad? Jihad literally means struggle. You see the word referenced often in the context of jihad fi sabilillah, or struggle in the path of Allah. Okay, so what form should that struggle take? Do you take it literally, okay, the warfare, or is it possible to focus your jihad, your effort, focusing rather on purifying yourself and focusing more on sort of an interior struggle against the temptations that assail all of us? So I mention all of that as a kind of, sort of parenthetical capsule history here of the concept, but it helps to explain why you will have that, as you look at the course of Islamic history, that you have jihad resurface at various points in Islamic history.
And granted, it's not exactly the same style, but we have different types of it, as you kind of mentioned, in Christianity, where you have people who, well, as I like to tell people, I says, we have our own version of the Westboro Baptist Church and the Catholic Church. There's little groups that'll do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, of course.
And
I think though the most important thing, I think, to focus on when we look at the death of Father Foucauld is that what he realized is, and this is what made him ready to offer his life, what made him ready, with an impressive amount of serenity to give up his life, is that he recognized that we should not measure our lives by longevity. Today in our culture, we put an awful lot of emphasis on, got to live as long as possible. And in itself, of course, that's not a bad thing. But for him, what he focused on was the notion of, okay, he understood what time is. Time is a gift from God. Make the best use of it, but don't grasp onto life. Rather, what counts is the intensity with which we follow the path laid out for us by Christ. And it's particularly poignant to me to realize, because of the fact that this was someone who, in his own estimation, early in his life, for a long time, had fallen very low and had let himself get distracted. And I'll just bring this around back to Providence Blue. That's the novel that Ignatius just published. Because in that novel, part of what I try to do is to explore Catholic themes of people who fall low and try to redeem themselves. That's what Father Foucauld, in his own words, had experienced. And so in the novel Providence Blue, what I do is I set it in my hometown of Providence, Rhode Island, and then look at those characters I mentioned earlier, Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, Robert E. Howard, the pulp novelist, and look at ways in which people stumble in life and try to pick themselves up and recover. And the people who have the most serenity are the ones who realize, now, the longevity in life, living as long as possible, that's not a bad thing, but it's not the first thing to concentrate on. The first thing to concentrate on is our relationship with Christ, what is it that we can do to deepen our focus, our disciplined focus on Christ?
Which is what Charles de Foucauld did.
Yeah, that's my read of him, yeah.
You're listening to the voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. We'll be right back right after this. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. And don't forget our own website, CatholicAudiomedia.com. We'll talk about more of that in a second. Well, we've had a great interview with David Pinault. He wrote the introduction to the book, Charles de Foucauld, by Jean-Jacques Antier. He also has a brand new book out called Providence Blue, which I'm reading now, and we're going to interview him back. And as he told you at the end of the interview, it's really all about that whole Catholic theme, focusing on people like Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft. So that should be interesting as well. See how that plays itself out. In the meantime, we're going to have Father Adriano tomorrow. Have yourself a blessed day. Enjoy this second week of Easter, and we will see you in about 24 hours. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.